"Sir, leave the country right now," said the new waitress to the billionaire, seconds before the $74 million deal. The glass chandelier made shadows dance across the wooden table where James Mitchell sat by himself, his old hands touching the edge of his coffee cup. At 62, the technology billionaire had built a business worth billions. But tonight, something felt unusual. The fancy restaurant buzzed with soft talking and clinking forks and knives, but his attention stayed on the young woman walking toward his table. She couldn't have been older than 25, her uniform neat and her dark eyes showing a seriousness that made him stop drinking. "Sir," she said quietly and quickly, looking over her shoulder before moving closer. "You need to leave the country right now." Her voice shook, but she kept looking at him. "Please believe me, you have maybe an hour or two at the most." James put down his cup, looking at her face carefully. In 40 years of business, he'd learned to understand people. This wasn't a joke or some big trick. The fear in her eyes was real. "Where are you watching from tonight? I'd love to hear from you." 3 hours earlier, James had been looking over papers for the biggest purchase of his career. A $74 million deal that would make his company the best in clean energy. The talks had taken months, and tomorrow's signing party would be the top of everything he'd worked towards since losing his wife 5 years ago. This deal wasn't only about money. It was about building something important. Something Catherine would have been proud of. The restaurant, Le Bernardin, had been their special place. Every anniversary, every celebration, they'd shared quiet dinners here. Tonight, he'd come alone to remember her before tomorrow's big moment. The restaurant host had seated him at their usual table by the window, where city lights sparkled like stars Catherine used to point at during their evening walks. The new waitress, who'd told him her name was just Lily, had seemed nervous during her first visit. Her hands shook a little as she poured his water, and she'd said sorry twice for small delays. James had been patient, remembering his own early days working his way up in business. Everyone deserved kindness, especially those just starting out. But now, staring into her scared eyes, he understood her nervousness hadn't been about the job. "What are you talking about?" he asked quietly, keeping his voice calm even though warning bells were ringing in his head. "Why would I need to leave?" Lily looked toward the kitchen, then back to him. "My brother works for a private security company. They were hired to watch you. There's going to be something bad tonight. They think you're connected to something you're not, but they won't listen to reason." "Connected to what?" James leaned forward, his businessman's thinking taking over. "And why are you telling me this?" "Because my grandmother always said, good people don't deserve to suffer for other people's mistakes." Tears filled her eyes. "Your wife used to help out at the children's hospital where my little sister was treated. She paid for operations that insurance wouldn't cover. She never asked for praise, never wanted thanks." The words hit James like he'd been punched. Catherine had really helped out there, spending many hours reading to sick children and quietly helping families who couldn't pay for treatment. "How could you possibly know that?" he whispered. Lily pulled out her phone, showing him an old photo of a young girl in a hospital bed, smiling even with the tubes and wires around her. Next to the bed sat Catherine, reading from an old copy of Charlotte's Web, her gentle smile as bright as James remembered. "That's my sister Sophie. She was 8 when she got leukemia. The doctors said experimental treatment was her only chance, but it cost more than my family made in 5 years." Lily's voice broke a little. "Your wife didn't just pay for the treatment. She visited Sophie every week for 2 years, bringing books and hope when we had none left." James's throat felt tight. Catherine had never talked about specific children by name, saying it wasn't about getting credit, but about love. She'd come home from the hospital happy with stories about brave little kids who taught her more about courage than any business meeting ever could. "Sophie's 21 now," Lily continued, wiping her eyes. "She's studying to be a children's nurse because your wife showed her that helping others is the greatest gift you can give. When I saw your name on tonight's reservation list, I knew I had to warn you." "Warn me about what exactly?" James asked, though he was beginning to put together pieces of a bigger picture. His company's latest contract had a defense part in it, and he'd heard rumors about business spying in their area. "There's a federal team that believes you're selling technology secrets to foreign competitors. They don't have proof, but they're planning to arrest you tonight as you leave the restaurant. It's supposed to look like a random stop, but they'll find fake evidence in your car." How big this was hit him like lightning. "But the signing tomorrow, that's exactly why they're doing it tonight. Someone wants that deal to fail, and they're willing to destroy your reputation to make it happen." Lily's hands shook as she spoke. "My brother heard the real plan. They're not after justice. They're after your company." James felt his world spinning. Years of building his good name of honoring Catherine's memory through honest business practices could be destroyed by morning. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. A noise near the kitchen entrance got his attention. Two men in dark suits had entered, looking around the dining room with trained eyes. "They're here," Lily whispered, her face turning pale. "The back exit leads to an alley, but they'll have that covered too." She looked around, worried. "There's a service elevator to the roof, but you'd need staff access." James's mind raced. Everything he'd built, every dream he'd shared with Catherine, hung in the balance. But as he looked at this young woman risking everything to help him, he remembered Catherine's words from their last talk before her sickness took her. "James, money and success mean nothing if we don't use them to lift others up." "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You could lose your job, maybe face charges for helping me." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Because your wife taught my family that love isn't just a feeling, it's action." She didn't have to help Sophie, but she chose to. She didn't have to spend her evenings reading to scare children, but she chose to. Her voice grew stronger. "She changed our lives forever, and I won't let bad people destroy the memory of someone who saved my sister." How big Catherine's unseen impact was hit James like a huge wave. All those evenings, she'd come home late, saying hospital traffic. She'd been creating ripples of kindness that were still spreading years after her death. "There might be another way," he said slowly. "I need to make a call." "Sir, we don't have time. Trust me." James pulled out his phone, calling a number he'd memorized but hoped never to use. "Senator Reynolds, it's James Mitchell. I need to cash in that favor you owe me. Yes, tonight. 'Cause someone's trying to frame me and I have evidence of who's really behind the defense contract leaks." He'd thought for weeks that his main competitor had been feeding information to foreign buyers while making James look like the bad guy. Now, with his back against the wall, he was ready to show what he knew. "I need protective custody for a witness," James continued into the phone, looking at Lily. "And I need it now." The two men in suits were moving closer, walking between tables with casual purpose. "Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments." Lily grabbed his arm. "The roof," she whispered urgently. "Whatever you're planning, we need to move now." James followed Lily through the kitchen, past surprised cooks and dishwashers, toward a narrow service door marked Authorized Personnel Only. His phone buzzed with an immediate call back from Senator Reynolds, who'd clearly taken his request seriously. "Federal agents are en route to your location." The senator's voice came through the speaker. "They'll identify themselves with the code word Charlotte, like your wife's favorite book. Stay on the line." As they climbed the service stairs, two at a time, James realized the irony wasn't lost on him. Charlotte's Web, the same book Catherine had been reading to Sophie in that hospital photo, was now part of his rescue. The rooftop door burst open, showing the sparkling city skyline and the sound of coming helicopters. But these weren't the enemy. 3 federal agents in FBI jackets were already waiting, having come down ropes from their own aircraft. "Mr. Mitchell, Agent Sarah Kowalski, FBI. Code word Charlotte." She held out her hand while her team made the area safe. "Senator Reynolds told us. You mentioned evidence of the real bad guys." James pulled out a flash drive he'd been carrying with months of suspicious messages he'd taken from his competitor servers. "Everything's here. Electronic money transfers, communication records, shipping lists that don't match declared cargo, and the young lady." Agent Kowalski pointed toward Lily, who stood wide-eyed at the dramatic turn of events. "She's the witness who warned me. Her brother works for the private security company hired to frame me." James placed a protecting hand on Lily's shoulder. "Without her courage, you'd be investigating my wrongful arrest instead of catching the real criminals." Within minutes, the FBI had worked with local police to arrest the 2 men downstairs, while a separate team moved on James's competitors' offices with search warrants. The complicated frame-up designed to force James to miss tomorrow's signing and allow the defense contracts to fall into the wrong hands fell apart completely. As morning came, James found himself in a federal building, giving his statement while lawyers rushed to make sure tomorrow's deal could happen as planned. The $74 million purchase would happen. But more importantly, national security threats had been stopped. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. But the real victory wasn't in the boardroom. It was in the quiet courage of a waitress who'd honored the memory of a woman she'd never forgotten. 6 months later, James stood in the children's wing of the same hospital where Catherine had volunteered, watching Lily read Charlotte's Web to a room full of young patients. She'd used the reward money from the FBI case to finish nursing school, following the path Sophie had started because of Catherine's influence. "Some pig," Lily read in the voice Catherine might have used, bringing Wilbur to life for children facing their own battles. James smiled, remembering how his wife's voice could make any story feel magical. Sophie, now a registered nurse herself, worked just down the hall in children's cancer care. The ripple effects of Catherine's kindness had created an entire generation of healers, inspired by love they'd received in their darkest moments. The $74 million deal had closed successfully, and James's company was now the nation's leading provider of clean energy technology. But the real treasure wasn't in his bank account. It was in understanding how Catherine's legacy lived on through every life she touched. Mr. Mitchell. A small voice interrupted his thoughts. A boy, maybe 7 years old, tugged on his jacket. Are you the man whose wife used to read to the sick kids? Yes, James knelt down to the boy's level. Did you know her? My big sister did. She told me. Your wife said that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. The boy's eyes were serious beyond his years. I'm getting surgery tomorrow and I'm trying to be brave like she taught my sister. James felt his throat tighten. What's your name, son? Daniel. My sister says your wife would have liked me because I love stories about talking animals. She absolutely would have, James said, pulling out a brand new copy of Charlotte's Web from his jacket. He carried them now, just as Catherine once had. This is for you, Daniel, and I'll be here when you wake up from surgery, ready to hear what you think of Wilbur and Charlotte. As he left the hospital that evening, James realized that true wealth wasn't measured in billions or business deals. It was measured in the love we leave behind, the courage we inspire in others, and the quiet acts of kindness that ripple forward long after we're gone. Catherine had built an empire of compassion that would outlast any technology company. And now James was finally learning to be worthy of the legacy she'd trusted to him. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining this journey of love, courage, and the unexpected ways our lives touch others.